Just dive in. Welcome everyone. My name is Mallory Bauer and I serve as the field representative for the Michigan Historic Preservation Network. We're so excited that you could join us today for our presentation, What to Know Before Starting an Old Brick Project. Slide. All right, quickly, I just want to point out a few functions of the Zoom software that we're using today. Many of you may be familiar. I do ask that all questions that you have be put in the Q&A box, and that will be in your toolbox that will either pop up at the top or the bottom of your screen when you wiggle your mouse. It says Q&A, and there's two little chat bubbles or talk bubbles that you can click on and type in your question at any point during the presentation. We will be asking questions as they come in, and then there is also plenty of time at the end for more question and answer and dialogue about bricks and how to approach projects in a way that ensures that those bricks last for as long as they can into the future. If there's any resources that come up that I feel like you should have a web link to, I will put those in the chat box, and they will also be included in any follow-up email communication. This webinar is being recorded and it will go into our YouTube channel. If you have missed one of our past webinars, they live on our MHPN YouTube channel, so you can check those out. And we will also send you a link in a follow-up email tomorrow, early next week at the latest. So thank you, and I hope you enjoy the webinar. Next slide. So today we're talking about what to know before starting an old brick project. Our bricks, our old bricks have different composition than our modern materials, and in knowing that, there are some things that we need to do differently when we approach historic brick masonry. And today we have Blair Bates with us, and he will be sharing his wealth of knowledge about what you need to know. A very brief overview. We could talk for days and weeks and months about everything that you need to know about masonry, but this is just going to be kind of like a brick 101. Slide. So if you are unfamiliar or this is your first time joining us, we are the Michigan Historic Preservation Network, and we advocate for Michigan's historic places to contribute to our economic vitality, sense of place, and connection to the past. We are a membership organization, and we cannot do what we do without the support of our members and volunteers. So if you want to learn more about us as an organization and become a member, you can visit www.mhpm.org for more information. Slide. And finally, we just want to thank the Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs for supporting these webinar series that we've been having this spring and summer. Thank you. All right, and without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Blair.
Hey there. What we're going to talk about today is I get a half an hour to talk to you, and then we have a full half an hour to review slides and question and answers. If you have a question, you just type it in and Mallory will stop me and we'll answer that question and continue to move forward. So type it into her and we have a full hour, so I don't think that'll be a problem here. Learning objectives today is cause and effect. We see the biggest problems of people try to repair stuff and they don't know what caused it. So it continues to come back or it gets worse because of the repair. Getting you to understand your mortar in historic structures, anything prior to 1910 especially, is very, very different than modern day mortars. You can't go buy a bag of tuck pointing mortar even though it's sold. It's going to ruin your building. We're going to talk about how to repair and how not to repair. We were trying to stick to the National Park Service Preservation Briefs #2 as far as what's required. If you look up NPS 2 for the National Park Service online, and you'll see their recommendations for tuck pointing and masonry repairs. And we're also going to talk about, at the end, contractor qualifications. What should you ask your contractor? How do you know if they're just talking out of the side of the mouth or they're straightforward and truly understand what they're doing? We see way too often, oh yeah, we do tuck pointing all the time. So do they do it right, or do they just do tuck pointing? So cause and effect. This is a project up north. The, the slide on the right-hand side is an interior wall of a restaurant, a beautiful restaurant, a nice high-end restaurant, and it's deteriorating. And they continue to seal it, they continue to clean it, and this material continues to come in. So when we were there, first thing I do is lick my finger, touch it, and taste it, and sure enough, it's salt. This is on the left-hand side, that's the outside of the wall. You're not going to fix the problem on the inside if you don't understand where it's coming from. The salt that they put on the sidewalk is just absorbed into this old brick and is being pushed in. To keep it dry, they put a dehumidifier during the day before the restaurant opens in this corner, and they end up sucking more water in because of it, and more salt water. So here they tried to correct it by drying it out, and they actually made things much worse because it's continuing to pull it in. The correct answer would be do something with this brick to seal it properly, and not a penetrating sealer ever. You can use a densifier so that it's not absorptive after you repair it. If you just repair the brick, and it's just going to continue to happen if you don't understand the cause. Here's another rising damp issue. What these people did in this basement, this is an 1841 house. What they did, the brick was deteriorating. You can see the deterioration there. And this is at Halloween when they went ahead and put the little face in there. So the brick was deteriorating, and they went ahead and sealed it with a very dense, hard latex modified mortar, which just continued to allow it to draw up higher the salts and the waters within the soil. And then to make it even worse, again, they put a dehumidifier down there, and it continued to deteriorate even further, because when the salts dry, they expand back out. And if they're inside the brick, then it pops the face of the brick off. Cause and effect. Here is another rising damp issue. This is in Battle Creek. The photograph on the left is how this building was, or on the right, is what was originally intended on this building. That stone wall went down 3 feet. So the stone is non-absorptive compared to the brick, and it's not picking up the salts from the sidewalk. When they re-slope the sidewalk and the road for drainage, etc., now the sidewalk comes right up to the brick edge, and further uphill, it's right over the brick, and the bricks are just getting destroyed. So the owner wanted the bricks to be removed and replaced with better bricks. We don't want to use better bricks. We want to use the same kind, but we need to densify it. Typically, they'd put slate or a shield of stone in just before the brick to stop the water from creeping up, but cause and effect is everything. Now here, cause versus effect is of the mortar that was repaired on this. This is the Whaley house. I think it's in Flint, maybe. It's sandstone, and they put a better, harder mortar, more compatible with today's codes in, and they stopped the moisture from coming through at the mortar joint, so it just deteriorated the stone. You can see where this mortar joint was and how much of the stone has deteriorated since then, because they put a better mortar in it. We don't need a better mortar. Mortar work over in Turkey, the oldest masonry structure we know of over there is 7,000 years old, and they use that crappy lime mortar. It's still there. Modern mortars happened in Roman times, and now the really modern mortars were after 1910. So prior to that, we were using lime, and it did very, very well. Lasted hundreds, well, in this case, this house, 100 years plus. And then we did some repairs, which you have to maintain things, and the repairs caused accelerated deterioration of the stone. Again, here, they tuck pointed this brick building after they removed the paint from it, and they used better, harder mortar, and now the brick is softer than the mortar. So any movement that the building needs to take place with from thermal, wind, etc., has to break the brick. So the brick is now deteriorating at a much accelerated rate. And this is from a class in Hamtramck. You can tell the mortar is way too hard. So I guess the mason here could guarantee the mortar because the brick is failing, but cause and effect, what is causing the brick to fail is very important. This mortar is just way too hard. It needs to all be taken out and start over again if you want this to last. Same with this one right here. I know we have some questions in the photograph side at the later half of the session. This building right here is in Allegan, Michigan, and they did these repairs, and it is recracked and failed first. But if you look at the building, it's right up against the river. You see this crack starts here, comes through the window area, whoops, down through the window. The whole corner of the building is falling down. It's a settlement issue. What should have been done first, this is a terrible repair. They used interior brick, so the brick is deteriorating instead of exterior brick. But the building is still settling, and if you walk up to that, the cracks are still there because they need to take care of the settlement issue, and that can be done via injecting cement slurry into the ground and getting a better footing underneath it. Instead, they spent a lot of money and ended up with this. This is a building south of Grand Rapids, built in 1904. And we were called in because they had all of these cracks and they wanted us to seal the cracks and repaint the building. And cause and effect of, no, the cracks are on the right-hand side here. So we flew a drone, photographed everything, and then mapped everything. And so these cracks are at a pattern or tell us that something's going wrong here. There's steel inside of the steeple, right below those louvers, and the steel is corroding. Then we had a survey, the modern surveying equipment performed on the building, and this is a side view of the building, and where the color changes from dark green to red, it's bowing out. It's just the design of this church. They weren't using a 3-to-1 in the nave ratio to hold back like a flying buttress. And so these walls have moved out 3.5 inches on each side of the building. So it's in trouble. We just did the survey last week, a year later, because the congregation is feeling, no, that was fixed years ago. It's not moving anymore. And in 1 year, it moved another 1/2 inch. The building's going to fall down if they don't do something. But understanding the cause is the issue here. All these cracks throughout the building, they just wanted them caulked and repainted. And they've done everything to kill this building. This is a cement block. When the block started to deteriorate, they used a latex modified cement slurry and painted the whole building with it. They continued to deteriorate, so then they put paint on the building. It continued to deteriorate by all of these cracks. So now they sprayed it with a silicone sealer. Why, I have no idea what they were thinking of trying to get these cracks fixed. So now nothing will stick to the outside of this building without major efforts. But again, if you get something to stick to the outside of the building, like an elastomeric paint, a coating system, if you could get it to grab on, which we can do that, you're not going to the cause of the original deterioration, which is a settlement of this roof due to the lack of flying buttresses. Here we have a building that has been painted and repainted, and this is 1 year after the painting. So it has been recommended that they put an elastomeric coating on, so they did. That's why we can see these brick shards hanging off of the elastomeric coating. They never went to the cause. The cause is the lack of flashing behind the gutter, and the gutter freezes over every winter because of the lack of insulation upstairs and lack of proper ventilation on a flat roof. So they just keep on throwing repairs and money at this building and helping the building to continue to deteriorate when they didn't go after the cause. This one's in Allegan. Again, here, there's something major going on. This is in Sturgis. You can see the crack that is through the stone lintel, and it's a real limestone lintel. And we can see where it is on the bottom left-hand side. It comes all the way up and through, all the way through the mortar joints, and then up to the next window. the building is settling on its side to the right-hand side, and they need to take care of the settlement issue first. And then they can go ahead and epoxy inject the steel lintel. They can re-tuck point the building again. But again, if you don't find the cause, we're not going to repair it. I don't know if Trish is here today on this webinar, but this is a building down in Three Rivers, Michigan. And you can see the windows more on the left side and on the right side where they're kind of cocked and crooked. They've tuck pointed this in the past, they've painted it in the past, but the killer is, this is a big thing for some of the buildings in Three Rivers. The wood beam and the window sills are all wood. So that beam that's holding up directly above the big glass windows is a completely rotted out piece of wood. And that this building has not collapsed is a huge surprise. So again, you have some issues. Well, the building to the right, where it has the wood window sills, they just covered it with aluminum. They did remove and replace the wood beam below the big one, but it's held up by wood columns. So the wood columns need to be injected and repaired to stop them from rotting, or what's holding the steel beam up is backwards. So that building will be in the same concern that this one is on the left. So we were hired to just stabilize it and stop the building from collapsing. The other thing to look at is corrosion issues. This is in Battle Creek, and the steel pins that are anchoring the limestone panels are all corroding. You can see that's me in the background, but I'm standing right in front of a delamination that's 200 feet in the air and falling down on the city sidewalk. And the one to the next of it, you can see it has been patched, but they aren't taking care of the cause of the leaks and the moisture transfer from above. So until that was done, you've got a real major issue here. The other deal with corrosion, this is the best shot I could find at the last minute, but you can see on the left-hand side, there's a door that's been bricked up, and that dark line that runs across is the steel lintel that was holding all this brick up. It's corroding so bad that it's actually lifting. This is a two-story building. It's lifting the second story up in the air. And you can see the tuck pointing that was done that goes over to the blocked up window. And then from the blocked up window, it continues all the way to the roof. Take care of the corrosion issue, then go ahead and tuck point or caulk or put the original door back in, but don't just paint it or caulk it or tuck point it until you understand what the real problem is. So problems that we see in repairs is people are not matching the original mortar in strength and in composition. When you hire a contractor, make them show you a sample of the work in your building and whether or not it's going to match. The big deal with this one is kind of a special issue. They used crushed limestone with mason sand. So there's some coarseness to it, and most masons hate this kind of stuff. It's very hard to work with, but if you're going to get it to match, make it match. You can see a little bit of bigger black stones and then a lot of fine sand. So they probably used a blend to get what they wanted. But this one is, I think, 90 years old, and it's in great shape. Again, here, this is a terrible repointing job. Where they've just kind of stuffed it in and smeared it over the brick sides to just fill it. It's, in this building is well over 100 years old. Why? But you see the paint on the building. We'll talk about that extensively, I think, for some of the questions I've seen already. This paint is lead paint. It needs to be handled totally different than anything else. So the mason's qualifications. What we see when you ask a mason to take care of the mortar on your building, ask them what the cause of the failure is, and don't put a sealer on it. Ask them exactly what are they going to do. Can they give you the procedure? This is 14 points, which nowadays we were using 16 points to do it. And like from point one, removing the deteriorated mortar, a saw and a chisel. Now we have to use HEPA if we're using a saw because we're not allowed to have the dust in the air. It's a carcinogen. But it takes 30% of our time. And as you go down to, that we blasted out, etc., all the way to 100% of the effort, what we find out is a lot of people are just doing step one, removing it, step 7 or 6, wetting it down, and then they put the mortar in, normally the wrong type of mortar, and they strike it back and they go home. So they're using 45% of the amount of effort. Quite often they're killing the building. You're paying for something that's not going to last. But they're charging you pretty close to the same rate of somebody that's doing 100% of the work. Really think about it, of what they're doing, and ask them specifically. If they say they're going to follow the NPS standards, that's great. Ask them for their mix design. Ask them for the procedure that they're going to use. And then you can find out that they're only taking the skin of the mortar off. They're not going down 3/4 of an inch that they should be going down if it's a 3/8 inch mortar joint. So they're just putting it back in and letting it fall out. So questions you might ask your contractor is, explain your last 5 projects and we would like to see them. Not your best 5, your last 5 projects. So you can see if they're going to destroy your building or not. You want to get their insurance, and you want a copy of it, and you want to be co-insured. Most of us have a policy that we can co-insure as many people as we'd like, and we don't pay for it. Other people, you pay $100 to be co-insured. But 11 years ago, I had a fall on a project, and I got pretty banged up. I've had 10 operations on my leg, and it's cost well over $400,000 so far. If I was not insured and you were not co-insured with me, you might be the ones paying for that $400,000. So make sure they're insured. We had one in South Haven where they just asked, "Are you insured?" And the answer was, "Of course." It ends up they caught the building on fire, and they did not have insurance. Get a copy. Be co-insured with them. Payment program, do we want 50% down? Why? If you want to bill once a week or once a month, do so. If they want to be paid ahead of time, and then they don't show up for a month, they're living off of your money. Be consistent with the payment program. And if you're going to have somebody inspect it, let them know when they're all done, my inspector's going to come in, and you have 14 days, and then you'll get paid if there's no punch list. We're seeing a lot of really bad ethics out there lately. Are you guaranteeing your work? For how long and against what? If originally the cause was leaking downspout or leaking gutters, which you're going to see of these slides that are being presented by the people on this program, if you've got a leaking gutter, I can't guarantee against a leaking gutter. I can guarantee my work. I can guarantee the tuck pointing. We always go 2 years labor and material, but it's unfortunate. People, yes, it's warranted for what? Is it prorated like roofing systems are, and is it only prorated? Go ahead.
So we had a question come in. Could you define what a punch list is?
Okay. When I'd ask my kids to clean their bedroom before dinner, they'd go ahead and clean it, and my oldest was always down in a hurry. I'd go do the punch list. I go up into his room. First thing I do is open the closet and found out everything was thrown in the closet or underneath the bed. That's his punch list. And when he gets everything out from under the bed and out of the closet and put where it's belonged, then he can eat his dinner. So on a masonry project, did they destroy your lawn, and are they fixing it? When you're all done, and it's a punch list, you provide a list that more or less that we punch out of all the things that need to be corrected. Is the mortar smeared? Did we mix on your lawn and killed the lawn? Are we reseeding it? Are we going to do something like fixing the ruts from where we were? Are you satisfied? You get a chance to go in and take a look at the project before you make the final payment. And if you feel you're not qualified, you can call Mallory and say, Mallory, who can come take a look at this for me? Mallory has the ability, she's got so many fingers out there to different areas. If somebody sends you a contract and you want it reviewed, ask for Mallory's help, and she can get to the right people to give you a hand to do that. So whether it be your contract with them or whether it be your punch list that, okay, they did it, but if they said, I'm going to tuck point your house, and they did it and did a crappy job, and all their contract says is I'm going to tuck point your house, well, you might have to pay them. So that's where you do the pre-work ahead of time of exactly what are you going to do, and you put it in writing. I go for a lot of these contractors nowadays. If their lips are moving, they're probably lying. So put it in writing. So if I had to take you to small claims court or to court, this is what you said you're going to do, and you did not do that. Hopefully that answered your question. If not, punch it in again and ask another question. The length of time for the project. When are they going to start? When are they going to finish? Are they going to come and go because they're working on 3 different projects at once? The security that's there. If I have scaffold up the side of your house that anybody can climb and get on the roof, or especially your commercial building, how does that work? And so anybody at night can climb up and get into your building or on the roof or go through the hatch or go through your bedroom window. And again, define in writing the procedure. How many points are they using? Yeah, we're going to take the bad stuff out. We're going to put good stuff in. It's going to meet building code. If you have an old house, building code on your brick homes says we need to use a type S mortar, when originally you had a lime mortar. So you're going to put a really, really hard mortar in, and like some of those other slides that we saw, it's going to destroy the brick, which is much more expensive to remove and replace. If they say we're going to buy new brick and replace your old brick, ask what the match is going to be. I mean, we've seen them where they're just terrible. They're using a red brick on an orange brick building. They're using a larger or smaller brick. So it looks like crap pretty quickly. Define what they're going to do and make sure you do it. So here is a mortar that the contractor put in that is too thin, it's too hard, and there's no match. They're using mason sand here, and you can see the stones in the background are much larger. And this is a very hard mortar. These brick faces on other locations on this building are popping off now because it can't move, it can't let any moisture in. In a common brick, and around this neighborhood, I'm originally from Buffalo, New York, but around here they call it Chicago Commons. Not sure what that is, but it came from Chicago. We do know what a Chicago common brick is, but it's a soft brick. Each brick will absorb about 10 ounces of water to fully saturate it. If it rains and this brick gets wet, it goes down into the mortar. If the mortar then can't pass it back out along with the brick evaporating it, then it freezes behind it and pops it off, and this is what you get. So they paid to have this entire building tuck pointed, and now they have to pay to have the tuck pointing removed when they didn't need to do 100%. But they need to have it removed and done properly, or the building will start failing much worse than it is right now. Now this is a pilaster, a column base, and you can see the mortar is great. It's destroying the brick. This is what's called a sand lime brick. It's an autoclaved brick instead of a kiln fired brick. But again, it's too hard and it's just getting destroyed. Wrong mortar. Oh, I see you're up there, Mallory. Do you have something? You're muted. Okay.
No questions, but time note, it is 1:30.
Ha. We're almost done. I hope. I'm on 35 more slides. Again, you see the new mortar that's been put on this building versus the original mortar that's on the second floor. It's a disaster. Here, they had deteriorated brick, so they said, yep, we'll replace your brick with a close match brick. Again, it's destroying the building even faster. This is a smeared on mortar where there's absolutely no removal. They just took the deteriorated section and then did this over the top of it. This one right here, they did a really good job. This is from the corroded steel lintel right here, is jacking the building up and causing these cracks, but they didn't rake it back. So when the sun is hitting this brick, there's a shadow right below the brick because it's a raked mortar joint, and the one they put back flush. So if the sun is out, it doesn't match. This is downtown Sturgis. This is terrible. I don't get it. It might have matched the original mortar, but not the weathered mortar. Same with here. They went ahead and tuck pointed it. They smeared it on, made a mess, got paid and left. Okay, Mallory, it's your show. And the photographs for you to insert them now.
Yes. So thank you to those who did send in some photographs of issues in their own personal buildings. And I'm just getting those queued up. So we'll get a few more pictures and things that are happening in buildings that we'll get to pick.
Okay, so
are
people sending more pictures in as we speak?
No, these are it. So if you do have questions, continue to type those in, and we will answer them. So this is some pictures from a Victorian house from the 1880s, and they are concerned about, you can see there's some nice cracking here. So they're wondering what might be going on here that they can do to repair it. And also the issue of coating. This appears to be a paint coating on this foundation, and they're wondering if it should be removed and how to remove it.
Okay, a lot of questions here. That's why we get a half an hour for these. And I always ask questions to everybody's question. So you guys are lucky that you're muted. This owner also sent us a video, and a picture's worth 1,000 words. And this was great. In showing the video, 50% of the roof water on this house dumps right down in this area. So once we got the backup view to see what's going on, it's pretty easy to understand. It's a settlement issue. All the water comes out of this downspout. As you can see right now, it's displaced, and it's only coming out 3 or 4 feet away from the foundation. So the sand, the soil, the dirt, the gravel that's underneath the foundation is slowly getting washed deeper and deeper into the earth as the water is hitting here. So it appears to me that what's going on, this crack is caused by settlement. When I take a really close look at that very top block, I can see this a little bit of unevenness below it where the mortar joint is. So we're getting a bit of overturning where it's actually coming out a little bit at the same time. So what we need to do is get the water further away from the house, first off, cause and effect. Repairing the crack, that can be injected with a really fine cement mortar to glue it back together and get your structural integrity, or it can go, we could core a hole, hopefully from the inside so you don't see it, and fill it with a self-leveling grout from the inside to make that a solid masonry unit. This style normally has 3 holes or 3 cores in it. As far as the paint, first thing you do is test for lead. There's the cheap way and the more expensive way. The cheap way is go to the hardware store and get one of these wiping sticks where you break the glass cartridge and then you wipe it on the paint. Wipe it on every layer of the paint, not just the outer layer, to see if you have lead paint. If it turns red, you have lead. Lead is a major concern for your health, and we don't need to get further into that, but it's a major concern for everybody's health. It only gets a certain amount of the lead. It doesn't, OSHA in Michigan now says if there's any lead, we have to take precautions as workers. So the next step, if it didn't turn red, would be send your paint chip to a lab, have them analyze it, and then they can tell you what's in it. As far as removing the paint, I mean, this is a nice grapevine style raised bead mortar joint. Normally it was a different color than the block, and it was really cool. It was very broad and highlighted this way. A little more expensive to do, but they spent the money to make it sharp. in stripping, you don't sandblast, you don't glass bead blast, you don't do anything if it's lead other than liquid stripping. But any blasting effort, including high pressure water, is going to deteriorate the face of the block or the brick in the first place. So we like a product system that where you can trowel it on with a knife, and then you put a piece of plastic or paper over it and let it dwell, and it dissolves the paint into the paste on the paper, and you can peel it to remove it. Are we allowed to talk trade names here?
Sure.
Okay. Peel away is one of the systems, but there's more than one peel away. There's 12 different peel aways. So you try samples of it first. Trowel it on 1/8 of an inch thick, cover it with plastic, come back when it's dry, and theoretically you just peel it away. Doesn't work that easy. It normally takes 2 coats. If you're going to use a commercial paint stripper or anything else, again, you can put it on, cover it with your paper so it stays for a longer period of time, and then you can pull it off. But always check for lead first.
Excellent.
Okay.
So there's a few more pictures from this, so you can see that it appears to be paint and coming off in big flakes in different areas.
And
Is
again,
there
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, is there anything you'd like to comment on these pictures?
Well, apparently there's a hole in that middle picture that water is going in. So it's coming out somewhere or going somewhere. Grout it full. I mean, stop the water from going in the first place. And you can see this is a low spot. So water backs up here and is continuing to assist with the settlement. And the photograph on the left, you can see where that crack has come around the corner and is working its way up. So it's breaking the block in half to do this now. So you've got a settlement issue that needs to be corrected, but go after the cause, better drainage away from the house, and then go ahead and take care of the effect. The paint, the way it's curling back, I can't tell if it's latex or oil. I'm going to say it's a rigid oil-based paint. Those are a little tougher to get off. So when you get a peel away system, which one are you going to use? Is it for oil-based? Is it for water-based? Is it for latex-based? There's a lot of different things going on. And this could originally also have been painted with something else and then changed to what they've done lately.
Sure. Any questions? I saw a hand raised, but if you have any questions, please type them into the question and answer box so that we can see those questions coming in. Do you have any good resources on the history of different brick types and appropriate matching mortar technique? Same with historic bricklaying techniques.
Oh, they're easy. For mortar matching? Mortar matching is a whole separate class that we can teach. The first thing you do is look at the sand. Take a chunk of it out, carefully crush it, and see the gradation of the sand. Is it coarse sand or is it fine sand? You know, what we call mason sand, or is it a blend of the two? The one picture I saw with the crushed limestone, you can blend it to get the perfect match. We have hundreds of samples. What we make is little hockey pucks and acid etch 1/2 of it that we can come out and do. If you're going to have a mason do this for you, have him do a sample for you elsewhere and say, this is what I'm going to use, and then have him do it in your mortar so you can see exactly what his procedure is. And pay him $100. Tell him, look, I want to hire you. I'll pay you $100 to do a sample so we're sure we're going to get what we're asking for.
Right, Blair, I think they were asking if there's like a book or something else that they could refer, get some information about brick types and mortar types.
I've got a million of them. Really, I collect them from the early 1800s all the way to present day of what we're told to do. So how to do it and how to get the match. The history of brick is a really good one, but it's a $150 book. Is a good book. I can get a copy of that and type up the number on it and send it to Mallory, and she could send that out.
Yeah, we'll try to compile some internet accessible resources and maybe some book titles that might be available through a library, or if you wanted to purchase it yourself. So we will compile a list
Okay.
for you all. So the property owner of this building that we're talking about right now did send in a point to clarify that that middle picture where there is the hole, there
Yep.
was a drain pipe previously there. And so they're looking at putting in a rain barrel and installing some French drains farther away from that setting as well.
Much farther away. Yes. Okay.
All right, so we'll move on to the next property. It's a nice little 1940s brick building. And their questions are, let me pull those up real quick, please. So they're asking, is painting a viable solution to some tuck pointing issues? And can paint contribute to the freeze-thaw cycle damage by trapping water vapor in the brick? If so, how do I prevent that? So I'll leave those two, and there's a couple more, but we'll start with those.
Okay. When this is over, um, are people able to contact me via email? Or will you have something so we can continue dialogue? I mean,
Yes,
you own
yes.
me. Mallory owns me after today, so she can make me do anything. Um, okay, so the picture on the right lets us know that before painting, the gutters leaked or the downspout leaks. Whether it be an icing issue at the edge of this house in the winter or not, and it's pulling the paint off and it's attacking the brick. You can see where they've painted over the deteriorated brick, and now you see it's continuing. So I would suspect the cause here is icing, leaking gutters. And you can see the spread, the lower you go, the wider it gets. So I wouldn't be surprised if we had ice here. So better ventilation, I can't tell ventilation issues on this roof. I don't see a ridge vent, so I can't tell how it's ventilated, and do we have icing issues. So this is obviously where dirt was up against it, that previous picture. And now the chimney, you can see the green growth coming out of the chimney where it's a brick cap. We don't make brick roofs because they leak because of the mortar joints. And so you can see water is getting in to the mortar right here, and that's what's causing all of this deterioration, including the cap. I fly a drone to look at something like this and get on top of the cap to see if water's coming in. Quite often I see the air handling unit for the air conditioner. So for the furnace, did they vent it up the chimney and did they put a liner in? Modern furnaces, because they're so efficient, there's nothing but water vapor that's coming up, that steam that you always see coming out. And in a chimney, it gets cool and it just rains inside the chimney. If they don't put a sealed vent in the chimney, this continually happens. And trying to zoom in on the one on the left, I bet you have open mortar joints there. Cause and effect. Take care of the cause first.
Okay, and they also were wondering if you had any tips for preparing the brick for repainting, and what kind of paint do you recommend? Um, since this is a painted structure already.
Okay. Um, First, for the looks of it, I would patch the brick back with the very weak latex modified mortar. Latex, the same kind of latex you see in tile work. So you'd go to your big box store and get that type of latex, and you'd mix up fine sand, 3 parts. Yeah, for the age of this, I'd use what's called a type K mortar, which is 3 parts lime, 1 part Portland cement, and 12 parts of mason sand. And then patch them back and tool it so it looks like your brick house again. Um, and then when it cures, 1 year later for lime, if it's an inch thick, so maybe 6 months later, um, you don't need to prime it. And you'd use a masonry paint, something that's alkali resistant. And if you went in to your local hardware store or paint store and you said, I need a masonry paint, then they would be able to select one for you.
Now, for the paint, in painting a brick structure that's already painted,
Mm-hmm.
do you need to remove the layer that is currently on the building before you paint? Or is it just kind of remove where it's loose so you can get a good adherence? What does that process look like?
Okay, if I was going to paint this whole structure, first I'd repair the brick. Um, and make sure we go after the cause. If water's still getting behind it, it's still going to fail. So it's not using better paint, it's go after the cause so we can fix the effect. If there's a lot of cracking, tuck point it. Don't use a painter's caulk and just go over it. You got to get the oils out of the caulk, so you have to let it fully cure. If not, you know, when you put the duct tape over your caulk tube to keep it alive, not drying out, that oil will bleed right through your paint system. If you have a chimney like this, you might want to use an elastomeric coating. It goes on very thick. You can still see the texture of the brick joints, but it's a rubberized paint. And it goes, you do a detail coat over any cracks, and then you do 2 coats. And it's 50 square feet per gallon is the yield rate to do it properly. But if you're stuck with this, then that's what you end up doing, providing something that's waterproof. And never pay attention to the word breathable, which is a humidity transfer. If moisture is coming out of this chimney during the winter, once it hits the coldness of the dew point, it turns back to liquid. So when somebody says, oh, this is breathable, I've never seen a paint can with lungs on it yet.
Okay. All right. Well, those were some of the questions that they provided. So we'll keep moving. We have 2 more structures. Again, if anybody has questions, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A box, and we'll answer those. So this is a commercial, late 1800s brick commercial structure. Again, paint. This individual would like to remove the paint from the brick.
Way to go.
And then they are wondering if once the paint is removed, can the brick remain exposed, or does it need to be recoated since it has been coated in the past?
Now, once you remove the paint, again, with a stripper, make sure you check for lead first. But once you remove the paint, it ought to be great. What I'm seeing here is 2 causes. The roof cap may or may not have a drip edge on it. And you can see, since right at the roof line itself is where the most of the deterioration is, does that cap slope my way or onto the roof? It needs to be sloped to the roof. So any water that sits up there sheds off, so it doesn't come over the side of the building. Remember, when the sun hits the top of this, it melts the snow. As soon as it gets into the shade, it freezes again. So you start destroying the whole thing. I just looked at one where they had a tile cap across the top, and when they took the tile cap off to replace the roof, they put the cap on backwards. So here this terracotta tile has a bird's mouth every 2 feet that's absorbing water and destroying the top of the wall. The other thing I see in this picture is the crack below that window on the right. And then the center window has one on the left-hand side directly below it. Yeah. And then you go to the far window, it's on the right-hand side. There's, go ahead and put your cursor over on it, right there. So there's movement going on. What's causing it? What's going on underneath this or inside? And again, if this is late 1800s, Portland cement had just been invented, but wasn't really added till mortar till about 1910 is when they started doing it. So this is lime and sand, 1 part lime to 3 parts sand in your mortar mix. And that's what they should be tuck pointing with. Oh, we're going to put a little cement in to make it a little more better. No, you're making it a little more worse. Lime mortar, when it fully carbonates, will be about 500 pounds per square inch in compressive strength. That's what your brick is. If you put something in stronger than that, then you're going to start destroying more brick.
Yeah, there are inappropriate mortars used in areas in this building that the property owner is aware of, and that's kind of, you can see a little bit of brick face has already popped off right here.
Right, because we're all using better stuff. No, it's not.
Now, I know you've said the peel. This individual said that they had been in talks with someone who was suggesting possibly using like walnut shells, like really tiny walnut shells, is like, so it's kind of like sandblasting, but it's walnut. What are your thoughts on that? What, have you heard anything about that?
Oh yeah, we do brass and bronze with walnut shells. You can also use ground corn cobs, but it's abrasive,
Okay. So
period.
not recommended for brick.
Not recommended. Brick, the way we fired brick back in the 1800s was in a tunnel type kiln. And the outer face got the most vitrified, went from clay into pottery, we'll call it, terracotta, etc. So the outer face is the most durable, hardest face on the whole brick. So once you remove that, now you're really opening up the brick to a much greater absorption and rate of deterioration.
Now you mentioned the bronze statues that they use the
Yep,
walnut and corn cob on. I've also heard liquid nitrogen being used, or
yep.
nitrogen pellets. Is that another thing that you would not recommend for brick, though? You would just recommend the peel?
It's still abrasive. That is the problem. We're putting it on under high pressure. And I don't mind samples of everything and then really looking at the surface. Even when we water blast, the, we put a standoff tip. So we'll go ahead and put a stripper on, and then if we have to water blast it off, we stay a certain distance away from the building. And the typical guy on our crew is leaning into it to get it a little better because he couldn't get it off. So we put a rod next to the power washer rod, so you can't get any closer than 20 inches or 28 inches, depending on the sampling that we've done, that we know we're not eroding the face off.
Right.
If when they do their sample, look on the ground. Are we seeing chunks of brick or the orange powder from the brick or the mortar, or are we just seeing the nitrogen in the paint? If you're seeing anything other than um, the paint, then they're eroding the brick face at the same time.
Okay, thank you. So we had a couple questions come in, and so I'll ask these questions before we move on to the last photographs that we had sent in.
Okay.
So the first question is, do you have a chart you'd recommend with the different mortar types and ratio of lime, Portland cement, and sand? And this is something that we can provide a link in the follow-up email as well. Do you have something like that?
I can do I can send that to you. Um, I'm sure we can find it on the internet somewhere. Um, Back in the 30s, we found out that we were destroying brick when we started adding Portland cement. So they came up with different ratios. We had gold, silver, and bronze. We had A, B, and C. So of course, everybody wants their best building. They used gold or A, which was the hard stuff. So we changed it. We took the letters Masons, MASON, WORK, and we took every other letter. So M, S, N, O, and K. N is a 1-to-1. K is the weakest. So you'd have O at 2 parts lime, 1 part cement, and the K is 3 parts lime to 1 part cement. And then in the reverse, type M, and of course, modern building code says we need an S here, which is 2 parts cement to 1 part lime, which is very hard. So it's a pretty simple ratio, but that is binder. Lime and cement is binder, and then that is 1 part to 3 parts sand. So if we're using a K 3-to-1, so that's 4 parts, and 3 times that is 12. So 12 sand to our binder.
Yeah, so we'll send a chart out with all of some good references about mortar strength and where they fall and what those ratios are, so that you all can continue to learn about mortar after this webinar.
Yeah.
Our next question is it best to use similar salvaged brick to replace older common brick? And are there other options?
Yes, it's best, but know where the brick came from. When we sort a kiln, in Harrisburg, we still burn and do it as demonstration. The stuff that's further away from the fire is more of a lighter color. We have what's called salmons and pinks. Those lighter colored bricks, they go in the middle of the wall. The darkest fired brick goes into the chimney, and so on and so forth. So if we take an interior brick and put it on the outside of our building, we're putting a very soft, porous, probably non-freeze thaw durable brick on the outside of the building that's going to get destroyed with freeze thaw. You can densify that with a chemical hardener, not a sealer, but a chemical hardener to make it a denser brick. If you use new brick, you just have to try to get a really good match. But remember, it's a really hard brick. It's quite often in what's referred to as an FBX. So this brick is good for 500 pounds maximum in this building, and an FBX is good for 4,000 pounds. So you're taking a very rigid element and stuck it in your building, and so now when your building is trying to move, it can't at that location. Okay. So yes, you should always use old brick, but back when this building was built, we didn't have American Society of Testing Materials to tell us everything has to be a common size. So bricks are not always the same size.
We have one more question. I just wanted to advance to a different photograph so we can see some really fun stuff going on here. The last question that we currently have in says, I have a 1920 brick facade that is separating from the front of the building, in part due to failure of the lintel. Two masons have recommended dismantling the front and reconstructing. And then his question is, what is the best way to assess the cost for brickwork as you start a project?
What is the best way to what?
To assess the cost for brickwork. So as you're getting things, I assume as you're getting quotes in, how should you approach?
Okay, well, that's tough. If they are dismantling it and it's separating, the question would be, it sounds like it's a veneer, so it's only one withe. A thickness of brick is called a withe. So if it's only one wide thick, what is it adhered to? So why is it pulling away is the first question. Something was said about the limestone. Is the limestone deteriorating? You can pin that brick back on to studs or to the original brick. If they used a fancy brick in the 30s on the outside and it's a solid brick building, they may use a different type of softer brick on the inside. And we can use what's referred to as helical anchors, where you drill a hole and you put the stainless steel spiral anchor in to readhere them so that it won't continue. But the first thing is addressing the cause. What made this bow out in the first place?
And they said in part to the failure of the lintel.
Okay, the lintels. Okay, so hopefully the lintels will be taken out and replaced. Don't use painted ones, use galvanized, hot dip galvanized. You can buy them at any brickyard these days, but paint fails, period. And assessing the cost, you really can't. If your mason is qualified and can convince you what they're doing and doing it properly, and you can get a couple of quotes and get a couple of quotes. Right now, because of COVID, it's almost impossible to get anybody out there, whether you're a plumber or a mason, to even look at the project. Again, if you can send photographs, can they still send photographs after this is over to you, and can you forward them to me?
Yes. After
Okay.
the webinar is over, I can help facilitate that, or we will include Blair's contact information in the follow-up email that you receive with the video recording link, so you can reach out to him as well. We also have our Historic Resource Council directory on our website, and that can serve as a resource if you are looking for various tradespeople or professionals when working on a project.
Right.
And
so any answer that I give you when you're corresponding with me, I copy Mallory. So Mallory is kind of my judge and jury on a lot of things. So she's making sure I'm sticking with the standards and understanding that it went from this webinar to help you fix your building.
Excellent. So this is the last masonry wall that we had sent. It's an addition on a residential property, and it has several years of caulking fixes. And so their questions are, what would be the first thing that needs to happen to get going on this project and stabilizing this corner?
Okay, so the first thing I see is the downspout as usual. It looks a little crushed. So it could be backing up also. So getting the water further away is always terrific. The age of the structure, do we know the age?
This addition, they did not provide an answer. So I do not know the age of this addition.
Okay. So I see the caulk. The biggest thing with caulk, a lot of people caulk point, is to make sure it's not asbestos. At the very bottom, I zoomed in on this earlier, and there's more than one layer of caulk here. Um, Asbestos is a deadly killer. We can eat it, we just can't breathe it. The repair for this is go after the cause. It looks like it's settlement. So most of these bricks, by the amount and the level of deterioration I see in that wider mortar joint up on top, these will probably be plucked out and then remortared in place and then tuck pointed. But we have to get rid of the cause first. So watch out for lead in the paint and watch out for asbestos caulk. Asbestos caulk has some unique characteristics when we look at it, and the curling, the drying and curling is one of them. And so that we see this curling outward is like, okay, maybe. If you take it in for testing, you always put it in a Ziploc bag. Nobody wants the receptionist to have this thing plopped in front of them as the dust billows out, and she's got to breathe it, or he's got to breathe it. But it's a pretty simple fix of replacing this brick, etc. But get rid of the cause first, and it looks like the water again.
Issue. Excellent. So it is 2:02. So thanks for sticking with us a little longer today. But those are all of the photographs that we had sent. Again, please look for an email. You'll get a Zoom email that says thanks for registering, but I will send a personal email with the link to the recording and some of the resources that we discussed during our webinar, including Blair's contact information. To those who provided pictures and questions, thank you so much for sharing your buildings with us and engaging and allowing us to look over them and learn from what is happening in your building. We will follow up with you with some more information. And of course, look for our webinars in the future. They will be on our website, www.mhpm.org/workshops. So you can sign up. August is survey month. So if you've ever been interested in learning more about historic surveys and communities, join us then. Follow us on Facebook to also stay up to date on what we are doing. So Blair, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your knowledge and thoughts with us today. And
You're welcome.
We'll hopefully see you all in our next webinar.
Okay, and keep in touch, folks. You know, we're talking most of these buildings are 100 years old. Modern buildings, we get a 1-year warranty on everything. So the best thing is do the repair so we can watch it for the next 100 years versus, no, we just satisfied it for today. We stopped the leak, but we destroyed the building. So good for you guys. Thanks.
All right. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.